Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Lucas and welcome back to the show. Today, I'm giving you my NFL preview. Now, you might realize that this is going up in two places. It's going up on YouTube, obviously, but it's also going up as my podcast episodes, so don't really be too worried about it. Like I said, it probably won't matter that much, but I figured I might as well say it beforehand. So if you are watching this on Spotify and you haven't seen it on YouTube, welcome to Shooting the Football Fair podcast. Now, if you're on YouTube, please go check it out. I talk about sports like this almost every week, and it's a lot of fun. So like I said, Shoot the Football Fair. If you want to check it out, please do. But let's go ahead and hop right into it. I'm just going to go through each team, give you my thoughts on each team, talk about how I think they're going to do, what position they'll get in their respective division, talk about and end up predicting my champion. So we're going to go ahead and start by going through each division in the AFC, then go through the NFC, and then we'll get to the playoffs, starting with the AFC North. I think fourth place, pretty obviously, for that division is going to be the Bengals. I still think, obviously, they're really young. They're up and coming. Joe Burrow has a lot of potential. I think with Joe Burrow, if you get a breakout Joe Burrow, I think they can make a push in the season. But with how tough the AFC North is this year, I personally don't think that they have the weapons or the talent to make a push for the playoffs. Now, don't get me wrong. I think they're going to be an exciting team this year. They have a lot of weapons. You have Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and obviously Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon in the background. But they have almost no line. Obviously, passing on Penei Sewell it still blows my mind they didn't take a guaranteed cornerstone on the line. And frankly, I'm really worried they're going to kill Burrow, very similar to what the Colts did for Andrew Luck. Like I said, the offense is going to be exciting for the Bengals. They aren't going to be good enough with no line. Mixon's not going to be able to run the ball enough. Burrow's not going to have enough time to make things happen. It's not good for him. Like I said, I think they're going to be a solid team this year. I think they're going to make progress, but they're still ages away. I mean, you're in a division with Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. Like, they're going to give up a lot of sacks, and that's going to suck. Their defense, however, I think can be all right. It's not going to be anything spectacular, but I think they should be able to stop the run. They have a solid front seven. Their defensive backs, Von Bell and Jesse Bates, or at least Jesse Bates, has always been solid. Von Bell is a veteran of this league. Again, they're nothing special this year, but we'll have to see how they end up progressing. Like I said, it's a progressive year, but they just need to figure out their line. In particular, you got to figure out your line. Moving on, third place in the North, I'm going to go with the Steelers. I still think they have a very good defense. Obviously, they lost some key pieces last year. Bud Dupree being the biggest one. He's not the only one. They got a couple of pieces here and there, and they're not, like I said, still a very good defense. That's not the part I'm worried about. The biggest part I have a problem with is their offensive line and Big Ben. I personally don't believe in Big Ben. I think he'll be better than he was last year. But you have to realize, he wasn't very good last year. In fact, he was really bad down the stretch. So, just because he'll be better than he was last year does not mean he will be good. And considering they have no offensive line right now, I don't know how they're going to get a run game going. They weren't able to get it really going last year either. They didn't have a run game last year, and I don't think Najee Harris is going to automatically fix that when they have no line. Now, I think they have a lot of good weapons, at wide receiver and tight end. I like Freiermuth. I think he will probably work his way to the starting lineup. I love Juju. I love Chase Claypool, James Washington, all of those guys over there. I think even Deontay Johnson is apparently expected to be very solid. But if you don't have a quarterback that can get to them, and if you don't have a run game that can open them up, I don't think that offense is going to be very good. I think they'll beat the teams they should beat because of their defense, and their offense will be able to do enough. But when you look at going up against teams like the Browns and the Ravens and other top teams in the AFC, I just don't think they'll hold a candle to them. I'm really worried that this team is going in the wrong direction. Now, Dwight Haskins has looked pretty good in the preseason, and he's not going to get the job this year unless Big Ben gets hurt, but maybe they do have their future quarterback. Maybe next year they can revamp, because like I said, they still have a lot of talent on this team, but they aren't going to go very far if they have no run game and they have no quarterback, frankly. Moving on to the rest of the division, I'm going to put the Ravens at 2 and the Browns at 1. I think they're really close. I think they're back and forth. One of the closest battles we'll have for a division this year. I love the additions of Sammy Watkins and Rashad Bateman. I think getting some more weapons for Lamar is going to be great. Offenses should still look good. Lamar is still an insanely great double threat. We'll see if J.K. Dobbins can make a starter or become a starter this year. He looked pretty good last year when he had the opportunity. Defense should still be pretty good. Obviously, they're still a Super Bowl contender. I think in the regular season, they'll be fine. They can easily push to win this division, easily push to be a top 2 or 3 team in the AFC. My only worry is, once you get to the playoffs, can Lamar push them through, right? That's been the knock. That's really been the only knock on him in these last couple of years is, can he play in the postseason? He made a great run his rookie year to push them into the playoffs. Obviously didn't win, but you didn't really expect much from him. Second year, all of a sudden he's an MVP. He's doing amazing things, and unfortunately, they get beat first round of the playoffs. And then last year, they do beat the Titans last year. Is that a leaping pad to the future where they can finally get a couple of wins in the playoffs and make a push to the Super Bowl? We'll have to see. But like I said, still a really good team over there. Not much to talk about, just a really solid team. I just think the Browns are better when you look forward. I think the Browns have one of the best rosters in the NFL from top to bottom, including the quarterback. You have Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt at the running back. You have OBJ, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku. They have an offensive line that was very good last year and can only get better, you would hope, at least. Oh yeah, they have Austin. I completely forgot they had Austin Hooper too. And then that's just their offense. You look at their defense, Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney on the edges. They picked up Anthony Walker, which I think is a great pickup for their defense. Their secondary should be really good. It's really young, a bright future. This team is really good. This team is a legitimate threat to win a championship. And there's not much stopping them. Everyone's worried about Baker. I think he can be the guy. I don't think he'll ever, or at least not this year. Maybe he got a couple years. I don't know if he'll ever be the best quarterback in the league. But if he can play like he's been playing in the last couple of years, there's no reason they can't win a Super Bowl. He's still a good quarterback. He's still a really good quarterback. So I think this team, they may only have a couple of years because that's just how roster turnover works in the NFL. But I think they have the quarterback, they have the roster, they have the defense. I really like this team to win the AFC North, and frankly, I really like them to be a team that can win the Super Bowl. I think they are a very real threat to win it this year. We're going to go ahead and move over to the West. Bottom couple of these teams right here, I'm not really sure which order to pick them. I think they'll have very similar records. I'm putting the Raiders at 4 and the Broncos at 3. For the Raiders, I think they're close. I think they'll win at least 6-7 games, maybe even a little bit more, and be more of a threat. But I just don't trust them overall. I like Derek Carr. I like the weapons they have. The offensive line was pretty solid. They did lose Rodney Hudson. I think that will hurt a lot. And I think their defense is also solid. I just think they're a couple of pieces away from really being that team. From being a team that can threaten the Chiefs, that can threaten the AFC even. I think Derek Carr can be the guy. I think he's been really, really good the last couple of years. He hasn't really been the issue. The issue has been, I don't even really know what the issue for the Raiders has been. I mean, last year was obviously defense, but I think they're kind of revamped on defense this year. I think they will be solid in that front. However, obviously, I still think they're at least 2-3 pieces away from really being a team that can threat, right? It's going to be interesting to see what they can get from Henry Ruggs and Hunter Renfrow this year. I think adding John Brown is great to spread the offense. Josh Jacobs, I think, will still be really good. Kenyon Drake is a good second option. Like I said, it just really comes down to, can they turn that defense into something special? Because their offense shouldn't be that much of an issue. It shouldn't, at least. I don't know how much losing Rodney Hudson will hurt that offensive line. So moving on to third, I put the Broncos, and like I said, I've been back and forth, but I actually feel pretty good with them at third. Now, I had to tell myself multiple times, I had to write it on my chalkboard, I will not pick them as a dark horse. I will not pick them as a dark horse. I will not pick them as a dark horse, because it's every year, this is a team that you think should be a dark horse, right? It's a team with a solid defense, and the offense, if they can just be, or with a really good defense, and if their offense can just be solid, they can actually push. However, every year, they just seem to just fall off. However, I do like them this year. And I like their offense just as much as their defense. Their defense, it should be good, right? I'm not going to just give up on the defense. I don't think you should. But I think with all the weapons they have, the running game they should have, And with Teddy Bridgewater at the starting job, I like this offense. I think their offensive line should be really good, or should be good enough to get the job done. Noah Fant, is he finally going to have that breakout year? Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton should be able to hold down the receiver spots. Javonte Williams is supposed to break out this year. Melvin Gordon's still going to be Melvin Gordon. And with Teddy Bridgewater at the starting quarterback job, I think this team's going to be at least mediocre. And by that, I mean I think they'll be pretty solid. You look at their defense, I mean, the secondary is almost elite. Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby are both really great cornerbacks. Justin Simmons and Green Jackson have both been really good in years past. They still have Von Miller over there. They should still have Von Miller. I don't really know what his situation is. Still Bradley Chubb. The question is on the front seven with their defense. If they can kind of bring that front seven and stop the run, frankly, if they can stop the run, I don't see any reason this team can't be really good this year. Like I said, they still have a while to go. They're still in a division with the Chiefs, but we'll have to see how they kind of make it work. At 2, I'm going to put the Chargers, and I just really love their team right now. Justin Herbert was amazing last year. Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, both studs. They revamped their offensive line, their biggest issue on the offensive end last year, bringing in a couple of key pieces for the offensive line. Now, their defense is the one part I'm mostly worried about. They have plenty of playmakers. Kind of like the Chiefs, they have a lot of playmakers, but they need to shore it up. They lost Casey Hayward last year, but I think Chris Harris, Derwin James are both really good. Nasir Adderley looked pretty solid last year, if I'm remembering the right guy, because who the fuck knows. Obviously, with Joey Bosa there on the defensive side, they have a lot of playmakers. The question is, can everyone else on the defensive end do their job? Because if your whole as a defense can do their job and you allow the playmakers to make plays, you are going to be a top defense in this league. Now, do I think they'll be a top defense? Probably not. But like I said, they have the players there. They have the offensive line this year. They have the weapons. They still have Mike Williams. They got Jared Cook this year. They should have a solid enough offensive line. And with a new coaching staff, I think this team might be very dangerous. There's a lot of good teams in the AFC. But I think the Chargers might be really good. I think at the very least, they're going to be pushing for a wild card spot. I think best case scenario, this is a team that could be a top team in the AFC. They could beat out the Chiefs for the AFC West. This is a team that is a very real threat to them. Obviously, they have holes, but they also have a lot of studs on this team. So moving to 1, I put the Chiefs at 1. I don't know. I can't pick against the Chiefs right now, at least not in their division. I think they're too good. It is really tough to pick against them. They still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Tyreek Hill. They still have Travis Kelce. They still have Andy Reid. But similar to the Chiefs, they have playmakers on the defensive end, but they're not very deep. And that's the biggest issue with their team. Now, the offensive line was terrible last year. There's really no way around it. They got upgrades. They did get upgrades on that line. They're getting back a couple of guys that are one of their guys that opted out last year. How much better will they be? That's my biggest worry. Again, you still have a lot of studs on that team. You still have one of the greatest coaches in the league, if not the greatest coach right now, and Andy Reid. You have a lot of playmakers on the defensive side, but they have a lot of holes on that team. A lot of pretty clear holes that if a team is able to pick apart, like a team with a great running game, a team with great pass rushers, i.e. the Tampa Bay Bucks last year, they're going to have problems with those teams. But I still think, at least when you look at the regular season, they're still going to be really good. Moving on to the AFC East. Now, this is a tough division, but I think obviously right now, 4th, I'm going to put the Jets. I still think they're quite a bit of ways away from competing. However, obviously, if Zach Wilson can be the guy, that rebuild would have a massive jump start, and I think they would actually be on the right track, maybe only a couple of years away, because they still have some solid pieces there. They have some solid players for that defense. They have some solid weapons, picking up Corey Davis. I love the pickup in Tevin Coleman. They didn't really set Sam Darnold up to succeed there, but they are giving Zach Wilson a shot. He's got the weapons. He's got potentially a really good running game, and he's got a defense with some guys there. So Wilson has a shot here. right? He's a shot in New York to really push that team forward. I still think he's a couple of years away from being that guy. I think he will be at some point. I do believe Zach Wilson has a decently bright future at the very least. I don't think he's going to be as good as Justin Fields or obviously Trevor Lawrence, but I think he'll be a good enough quarterback to where if the Jets are able to build around him, this is a team that can have a bright future. However, right now, they're still a little bit of a ways away. Moving on to third, and again, these next two have been really close, back and forth. I put the Patriots at 3. Now, they're getting their defense back. They lost like 9 guys last year that are all coming back this year, at least most of them are. So I think their defense is going to be revamped. I trust Cam Newton to be able to run an offense. However, when you look at their offense, that's not my issue. Nelson Aguilar is their number 1 receiver. He's not a bad receiver, but he's not a number 1. And that wouldn't be the biggest issue if they hadn't picked up 2 different tight ends last year. 2. I thought it was solid. I thought they were going to have enough receivers. Then I look at the roster, and all they have is Nelson Aguilar. That's all they have. They pick up Kendrick Bourne, who is all right. I don't really know what Jacoby Myers is going to offer. N'Keal Harry is still on the roster, but I don't think he wants to be there. And their offensive line should be all right. I mean, their offensive line should be fine. It should be a middle of the road, maybe a little bit less offensive line. That's not really the issue. I think the issue is I'm not sure what they're going to do with the receivers. I don't like the receiving core. I love Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Maybe not together. And maybe that's just the offense Bill Belichick wants to run and he'll make it work. But in today's NFL, it just doesn't seem right. Like I said, their defense, though, they're getting everyone back. I think their defense is going to be really good this year. I think they're going to be a team that could definitely make the playoffs. And at 2, I put the Dolphins. And like I said, I was flip-flopping back and forth. But at the end of the day, I think Tua is going to take a jump. Their defense last year was amazing. I still think they're going to have a better defense this year than the Patriots do. I think their defense was, like I said, studs. I think they're only going to be better. They have a trio of great receivers in Devontae Parker, Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle in the draft. But like I was saying, ultimately, this is a team that will only go as far as Tua allows them. If Tua comes in and he plays great, there's no reason this team can't make the playoffs. But if he comes in and he plays like he did last year, where he's back and forth, he has some great moments, but he's not consistent enough and he makes some bad plays, they could easily miss the playoffs. Like I said, with how deep the AFC is this year, they could easily miss the playoffs. And I definitely believe they have the defense to do it. However, I think they're going to have a tough time catching number 1 team here with the Bills. I think they're the clear favorite. They may be the favorite in the AFC. They have an amazingly built team. From top to bottom, it's not even close. You have a potential MVP at quarterback. The Devin Singletary and Zach Moss running back duo is very good. Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, they've just picked up Emmanuel Sanders because why not? Their offensive line was very good last year. Should be about as good this year. Their defense was amazing last year. It's only going to get better. Overall, this team is really good. This team is really good with a lot of playmakers, and I see no reason this team misses the playoffs. Even if Josh Allen gets hurt, I think this team is good enough to make the playoffs. Not that I believe in Mitch Trubisky to win a championship. I just believe in the rest of this team to be able to go far. Like, this team is very good and very deep. And there's not much else to say about them. I literally just wrote, clear favorite, great built team, potential MVP at quarterback. You have those 3, you're good. Moving on to the final AFC division, we're going into the South. With potentially 2 of the worst teams, with potentially 2 of the best teams. Starting off with the Texans, assuming Deshaun Watson doesn't play this year, this team is awful. They could legitimately go 0-17. There is no one on this roster other than the 4 running backs they have, because why not, and Larry Tunsil. That's it. They picked up 3 running backs in the offseason. They picked up Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay, and Rex Burkhead, because why not? And just said, you know what, we'll just throw a bunch of third stringers out there for the rest of the team. And frankly, it is just abysmal. And like I said, I wouldn't even play Deshaun Watson if I was a Texans. I don't know if I'd do that, because In all reality, if I were the Texans and Deshaun Watson was not going through legal issues, he would have been traded in June. I don't know what's going on. I don't really know what's going to happen. Even if Deshaun Watson is there, I don't even know if they're going to be better than the Jags this year. I don't even know if they're going to be better than them. So, we're not going to talk too much about them. Moving on to the third team, the Jags. Obviously, I'm very much intrigued by Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer. It is going to be really interesting how that team works out. They still have a lot of holes on that roster. They just lost one of the best defenders in Joe Schobert, and they're better than the Texans, but that's not saying much. Still not over their draft. Obviously, picking Trevor Lawrence, great. They had one good player last year. They had some receivers that you can't really blame them for, but they had one really good player last year. They had one good running back. That was James Robinson. And then with their second first-round pick, they picked another running back in Travis Etienne. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm still baffled by that. Now, obviously, Etienne is hurt, so it doesn't really even matter, but they could have picked a defensive player, an offensive lineman, someone to help that team out, and they went with a running back. Their one good position last year. I don't understand. I just don't get it. Now, these next two teams, the Colts and the Titans, are neck and neck, in my opinion. I think they're back and forth. I personally believe that this division could go either way, and if both their teams play at their best, I think the Colts are better. Overall, with the quarterback, I think Colts are better. However, biggest issue is that I know Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson are both looking pretty good to play week one, which is kind of shocking. But with injuries, with uncertainty, we still don't know what Carson Wentz that's going to be there. I can't put the Colts at 1. So I'm putting them at 2 under the Titans because you know what Titans you're going to get. You don't know what Colts you're going to get. So, overall, like I was saying, I think they have a better roster. Defense can be very good. They have potentially the best defensive player in the league in Darius Leonard, followed very closely behind with DeForest Buckner. I think the draft of picking up Kwity Paye, being able to replace Justin Houston is huge. I don't know when Deo Adangbo is going to be there, but he looks like he's going to be really good, and he was a massive steal for a second-round pick. Secondary, there are questions there, obviously, but with Kenny Moore there and with Justin Blackmon, I think both those guys are studs. Xavier Rhodes played really well last year. It would be really interesting to see if Isaiah Rodgers can be a cornerback because he's so fast. If he can learn how to play the actual cornerback position, he would be a huge playmaker. But right now, like I said, a lot of talent on the defensive end. One of the best offensive lines in the game, if not the best offensive line in the game. Maybe even the best run game in the league. Now, it's tough to put... Obviously, they don't have any running back better than Derrick Henry. But you put Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines, and Marlon Mack in the same backfield. That's one of the best running games in the league. It's not even a question. With the offensive line as well. I like their young receivers. I think Michael Pittman is poised to have a breakout year this year. Zach Pascal has always been so good for the team. Paris Campbell looked really good before getting hurt last year. Mike Strawn is apparently a stud. They picked in the 7th round. I don't know how much he's going to do this year, obviously, but... And they still have T.Y. Hilton. They still have a huge veteran in T.Y. Hilton. And this team is looking really good. Now, I was saying earlier, what Carson Wentz are they going to get? I personally believe that Carson Wentz is poised to have a breakout year this year, to bounce back in a massive way, with a great offensive line, with a great run game, with great receivers behind him. I don't see any reason why he won't be good. Now, when is he going to be back? It's tough to tell. It's looking pretty good. He'll be back early. We'll have to see. But their biggest issue right now is how tough their schedule is to start. They could easily start 1-5 if they don't have Carson Wentz. There's no offense to Jacob Eason. There's no offense to Sam Ehlinger, whoever's going to start. But they have a really tough schedule to start the game. I talked about this in one of my last podcasts. So if he's not there and the team isn't good enough to rally around a young quarterback, who knows what's going to happen? But like I said, I think Wentz will be back pretty early. I think they'll be good. I think there's no reason they shouldn't make a push for this division and, hell, even the Super Bowl. Now at number 1, I'm putting the Titans. They still have Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown. Ryan Tannehill has been a stud. They just decided to go pick up Julio Jones because why not? They did lose Corey Davis, and that's going to hurt, but it's not really going to hurt that bad when they replace him with Julio Jones. Now, there are question marks surrounding the offensive line. How are they going to use that? Are they going to be really good? Sometimes it doesn't matter, because when you have Derrick Henry, it really doesn't matter at times, but their offensive line at times struggled last year. That's going to be a key for them. Defense, and then their defense, it can be good. I love the addition of Bud Dupree. Their defensive line last year wasn't very good. Picking up Bud Dupree for pass rush, Denico Autry, both great pickups. Their defense should be pretty good this year. Their secondary is kind of more an issue this year. We'll have to see what they can do. But like I said, I like the players they picked up. They're making a good run, and as I was saying, I think they're one of the best teams in the AFC. There's not much of a question to that. Like I said, you pretty much know what Titans you're going to get. You know they're going to be really good. You know they're going to be run heavy. You know Derrick Henry is going to rush for a lot of yards. You know Julio Jones and A.J. Brown will be there. However, one thing people are talking about, Julio Jones' injury history. Some people have been saying, well, he wasn't injured beforehand. Some people are saying he's going to be at an injury risk. My thing is that, yeah, he wasn't injured beforehand, so he should be fine. However, just one injury is all it takes to kind of push you down a road of unfortunates. Is that injury going to be something that keeps popping up over and over? Is he going to be fine? We'll have to see. Frankly, they don't need Julio Jones. He's kind of like a luxury. I still think they'll win the AFC South, but again, I think the Colts have a real shot at taking it too. So it's going to be really close. It's going to be one of the most interesting, probably the most interesting battle for a division. Moving over to the NFC now, starting with the NFC East, or the least, if that's how you want to look at it. I still think this is going to be a very bad division, but with some good teams there. Starting off with the Giants at 4. I mean, there's not much to say about this team. They still don't really have a really good line, but it should be on the up and up. Defense is young. Saquon, he's coming off an injury, but again, I'm not really worried about him, more as just the offensive line. Daniel Jones, is he the guy? There's a lot of talk. Could be close to a team like the Eagles. They also could be close to competing if everything goes right. However, I think they have a lot of players there that probably won't pan out. I think their defense will be solid this year. I think Kenny Golladay will be pretty good. He'll be a good help for Daniel Jones. Really, you're looking at it as if Daniel Jones can't play this year, he's probably not your guy, and you're going to have to find a new quarterback. Like, he is really the key this year. If he plays really well this year, because he's shown flashes. If he can play really well this year, his team's going to be pretty damn good. And it's going to have a bright future. And could leapfrog to even win the division this year. However, if he's not the guy, they're going to be searching for a quarterback, and hopefully it's quick enough so that way this talent they do have on their team doesn't go to waste. At 3rd, I'm putting the Eagles. They haven't really had an offensive line ever, frankly. Even in 2017 when they won the Super Bowl, their offensive line was average at best. I mean, you go back and watch Carson Wentz highlights, for instance. Half of his highlights, probably 2/3 of his highlights, are him escaping a broken down pocket. And their offensive line hasn't gotten any better since then. Like, it's only gotten worse. People want to talk about how Carson Wentz struggled so much and how, he's an injury-prone guy. Well, it's because the Eagles didn't block for him. He was getting hit over and over and over again. And he was amazing at escaping in 2017, but it hasn't gotten better since. And like I said, that's their biggest issue. However, their offense should be really exciting this year with all the weapons they have. Should be. But it's going to be inconsistent, probably. It's probably going to be very inconsistent, and who really knows how this team's going to play. When you look at their defense, however, if they can stop the run, I think they're going to have a pretty solid defense. So, overall, I think this team will be solid enough, but it's going to be very inconsistent with their offense, I think. And if they can get an offensive line coming, if they can kind of get that defense shored up, this team could be good in a couple of years. I will admit, I think this team could be really good in a couple of years. I just don't think they have the team this year to be consistent enough to make a playoff push. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put the Cowboys at 2, and there's a lot of questions here. Getting Dak back is awesome, but they've talked about how he still has an injury that could be lingering throughout the entire year. So how is he going to come back? How is he going to play? How is he going to play through this potential injury? You look at Zeke; he had an abysmal year last year. Has he hit that wall? And my issue isn't with the running or how many yards he was getting. He didn't really have a great line. It was more about the fumbles. He had a lot of fumbles last year. He just didn't look good, frankly. And that's my biggest worry. Was this a one-time thing? Or has he hit that wall, that running back wall, where he's kind of done? So it's going to be interesting. Their offensive line, not the offensive line of old. They're getting some of their guys back this year. I still don't think that offensive line is going to be very good anymore. They should be, they might be average at best, but they're not the Cowboys line of old, let me tell you. And then finally, their defense. Their defense was awful last year, and I don't think it's going to be any better this year. I think it will be a little bit better because their defense was just tremendously bad last year. This year, I think it'll just be kind of bad. But I think overall, they have a lot of talent where they can make a push for this awful division. But who knows? Who knows? Finally, you're looking at Washington. I think his team's actually going to be pretty good. I was talking down about the rest of this division. I think Washington's going to be really good this year. Their team looked very good down the stretch. And their defense was amazing. The running game was going. They have a lot of weapons. You have McLaurin, Logan Thomas. They picked up Curtis Samuel this year. They brought in Fitzmagic, who I think is going to be very good for them. I think he's going to be able to make a lot of deep plays. This team could be a threat for the NFC this year. They could win a lot of games this year. In my opinion, this is their division to lose. Frankly, I think they are so much farther ahead than anyone else in this division. I think it is their division to lose. And I think they are going to be a good NFC team. Last year, it was like, they snuck in because this division was so bad. But I think this year they will prove themselves to be a really good team. Going over to the West, I think this is probably the best division by far in the NFL. I think you're looking at 4 teams who have legitimate shots, who could have legitimate shots at the Super Bowl this year. 4 teams. All 4. I think you could see all 4 of these teams in the playoffs, potentially. And at 4, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to put the Seahawks at 4. I don't really like the situation they're going in. I think they're on their way to their downfall. Their offense, you look at you have Russ. You still have DK Metcalf. You still have Chris Carson and Tyler Lockett. I still think they have so many weapons on offense. So they're still going to be a really good offense. However, they didn't really change their offensive line at all, which was their biggest issue. They still have placeholders for an offensive line. You might as well just put 5 couches out there. They didn't do anything last year. And I know PFF ranked them really high, even though they have almost the most excellent. I don't give a shit what PFF says. PFF might be the worst thing to look at grading football players. I swear to God, they suck. But their offensive line was abysmal. It got Russ to potentially one out of Seattle, and they didn't do anything about it. You look at their defense. Their defense was very overrated last year. They got exposed early in the season. Then they started playing some worse teams, and all of a sudden their defense was good again. They have Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams. That's it. The rest of their defense is almost nothing. They lost KJ. They lost so much more than they gained this year in the offseason. Their defense is going to be it's going to be worse than a defense like the Chiefs or the Chargers, who have the same amount of play. Don't get me wrong. Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams are both really good. But it's not going to be their fault when the defense sucks. And if the offensive line can't block for Russ or Chris Carson in as good of a division as the West, I don't like them this year. I simply just don't like where they're going. Moving on into third, I'm going to put the Cardinals. I think they're a pretty damn good team. Obviously, so is the division, but I think they're a really good team this year. They upgraded their line. They brought in A.J. Green to help this offense. Defense should be pretty good as well. They only brought in a little guy named J.J. Watt to help the defensive line. This is a team that could definitely win the division. I think any team could really win the division. I think the Cardinals have a real shot. They're still pretty young. They still have a lot of risk attached to them to put them to win this division. But they have so much upside where they could easily win this division and easily compete for a Super Bowl spot. Moving on to 2 now. Moving to the 49ers. It's a really tough team to gauge. They were so hurt last year. that you just don't really know what you're going to get. You don't even know who's going to be at quarterback right now. You don't know, you don't know who's going to start. I mean, it could be Jimmy G or Trey Lance. They both look pretty solid in the preseason. Frankly, my biggest thing is that their defense was still really good last year, and they lost half of that. Now, sure, they lost a couple of key pieces. They lost Richard Sherman and Ahkello Witherspoon, but overall, the defense was still good. They brought in some more pieces to help with it. If the 49ers can stay healthy, they should bounce back. Offensively, last year, they didn't have George Kittle for half the year. They didn't have Mostert for most of the year. They didn't have Jimmy G for most of the year. I think this team is going to be really good if they can stay healthy. However, I mean, we've seen the 49ers. Are they ever going to be healthy? I think that's a real question to ask. But, I mean, it's tough to not at least try to base them off a healthy team. So, like I said, overall, I think they'll be pretty good this year. I think it's going to be really close, but there's still a lot to see. Like I said, it's almost impossible to actually predict this team because of they didn't have half their team last year. They might be using a different quarterback this year. We don't even know who the quarterback's going to be, but I do like them overall if everything goes right. Now to the number one team, going to the Rams. Defense was amazing last year. It should only be better. The team overall was really good last year. They still have a lot of weapons. They added a star quarterback in Matt Stafford. They should be at the top of the class. I mean, they should be a top team in this league. So I'm not too worried about the Rams. I think they are a tier above the rest of the NFC West teams. I think they're in the top tier teams in the NFC with the Packers. So it's going to be close. I think, like I said, any one of those four teams can win that division, but I like the Rams the best. I really do. Moving on into the AFC North, I'm going to put the Lions at 4, obviously. I mean, they lost their only life vest last year. I love that they picked Sewell, but they're still a really bad team. I think picking Sewell is a great step in the right direction. You can get that offensive line going. You can hopefully build a defense, get some weapons on offense. But overall, they're still a bad team. So there's not much to talk about with the Lions. Moving over into the third place team, I'm going to go with the Vikings. Their offense should still be good. Still have Dalvin Cook, still have Justin Jefferson. You still have Kirk Cousins. Overall, offense should still be good. Should still have a solid offensive line. But the defense was, and frankly, still is, abysmal. They brought in Patrick Peterson, which should help the defense a little bit, but only one player is not going to change an entire defense, right? They're going to need more. And it's still the biggest worry for them is the defense. So, like I said, great offensive team, awful defensive team. And I don't think their offense is good enough to carry a bad defense. So, moving on into the second place team, the Bears. The team is still solid. Now, losing Raekwon Smith defensively is going to hurt a lot. I don't really know how good their defense is going to be, but it should still be pretty solid. The O-line is not that bad. They still have some weapons. But the question is who they're going to start at quarterback. I love Andy Dalton. I think he's a solid guy, and he could lead them to the playoffs. But if they want to compete with a team like the Packers for the division, you got to start Justin Fields. Now, I get the reasoning on why you don't want to start him early because this dude should be your franchise guy, and you don't want to waste him. You don't want to risk injuring him for the future. I get that, but this is a team that could compete this year. They still could. David Montgomery was very good last year. Offensive line should still be pretty good. You bring in Justin Fields. It doesn't really matter who your receivers are. I mean, it does a little bit, but still Allen Robinson there. I think they brought in Marquise Goodwin this year. I think it's a solid pickup. If they did, maybe it was already there. I don't know. Frankly, like I was saying, I don't want to say it's a clear and obvious choice for who should play quarterback. But I think it's a pretty clear and obvious choice. You got to go with the best player, and the best player is Justin Fields. At least to try to start. If he doesn't play well, okay, bring in Andy Dalton. I don't know. Either way, moving on to the best team in that division, it's the Packers. I think they may be the best team in the NFL, frankly. I think they might be the best team in the NFL. And you just look at their team. Great defense. Great offensive line. A plentitude of weapons. And you still got the QB. There's not many weak spots on this team. There may be none. And the thing is that if I'm a Packers fan, Aaron Rodgers leaves. Okay. Still have a really good team. Sure, I mean, you kind of have to hope that Jordan Love is the guy, but he looks pretty good in the preseason. And with this kind of team behind him, if they can keep it together for him, it won't be that hard to be the guy. I'm going to be honest. This team is very good with or without Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers just makes them the best team in the NFL potentially. I mean, there's not much to talk about this team. I've sung their praises multiple times on this podcast. I do believe the Packers are a really good team this year, and I think they should have no issue winning this division. Even if Justin Fields plays, I don't think they should have any issue winning this division. Final division to talk about. Let's go to the NFC South, the Panthers. McCaffrey's coming back. I like the addition of Sam Darnold. They still have a while to go on this team. They have some weapons. They have DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, I think, is still on that team. The defense is still quite a bit ways away. But if Sam Darnold can turn his career around, you can start building a defense around that team, build an offensive line. Kind of like it. I'm not going to lie. I kind of like the start. You know, I think they have a solid future if Darnold can be the guy. If not, Christian McCaffrey probably won't retire as a Panther. Moving on to the third team, I'm going with the Falcons. I still think this offense should be really good. I mean, Matt Ryan is still a really good quarterback. They bring in Kyle Pitts, still have Calvin Ridley, still have Mike Davis. I don't really know what their offensive line is going to be this year, I'm going to be honest with you, but that's probably the biggest issue, but I'm not sure. Overall, though, their defense needs some work, right? I mean, they need some work on that defense. That defense is going to still struggle this year. But if they make a couple of good moves, I don't see why Matt Ryan couldn't make another run with the Falcons. I'm dead serious. I think this is a team that if they can get a defense together, they have the offense. If they can get a defense together, this team might be pretty good. I don't know about this year. I don't know if they have enough time to make some moves to make a defense good enough, but they have the offense there. Going to the top side of this division, I'm going to put the Saints at 2. They still have a great defensive front and a DB core. They lost Janoris Jenkins. They lost a couple of pieces this year. Their defense is going to be iffy, I will admit, but they still should have a solid defense. Their offensive line can still hold up this year. They still have a lot of weapons. Obviously, you still have Kamara. Hopefully, Michael Thomas can get back sooner rather than later. The question is Jameis Winston. Which Winston are you going to get? I personally believe, after learning under Drew Brees how he played last year in his absence, I think Jameis Winston can be really, really good. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback this year. I think he can lead this team to the playoffs. And I think he's going to be pretty good this year. I think he's going to be really good. Finally, at 1, the Buccaneers. They have so many weapons on the offensive end. Offense and defense are both really good with Brady. They won the Super Bowl last year. Not much to talk about here. I do believe they could finish below the Saints and even the Falcons, but I think they're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to be a scary team in the playoffs. Moving into the playoffs, let's start with the AFC. I think Bills will be the first seed. I think they will overtake the Chiefs. I think Chiefs will be the second seed, Titans at 3, Browns at 4. The thing is, I think those 4 teams could finish anywhere within each other. I do think the Bills will get 1, but I could see the Chiefs falling to 4. I could see the Titans going up to 2. You know, I could see the Browns getting 2. So I think it's going to be really close. And then I think wild card teams, I think 5, you're going to get the Colts. Like I said, I think they're going to be really good this year. The Ravens will be at 6, and I'm going to pick the Dolphins to go at 7. I'm going to pick those 7 to be my playoff teams. I really think that these 7 teams have real shots at the Super Bowl. And I think if things go right, I have the Chargers at 8, and then 9, 10, Steelers, Patriots. I think those 3 teams can also make a push if things go right and kind of fall in their favor. Looking at the playoff games, Bills get the bye. First game will be the Chiefs, Dolphins. Got to go with the Chiefs there. I think they'll just outplay them. Then you got Titans, Ravens. This team's been matched up the last 2 playoffs. I think they'll do it again, but I think the Titans will get it this time. And then finally, you have the Browns, Colts. I like the Colts too much. I just like that team better than the Browns, right? I think they're really close to each other. I think the Browns at home, they could definitely win. But I think with Carson Wentz, if he's playing his damn heart out, I don't see any reason the Colts can't win that game. Then you have the Bills taking on the Colts, a rematch of last year's playoff round, and I think the Colts are better, but I think the Bills are too. I think they're only going up, and I think the Bills, they take that and make it to the AFC Championship. Then you have the Chiefs and Titans. I just think this is where the Chiefs, I think this is where the holes of the Chiefs catch up to them. I don't think they can beat the Titans. I don't think they can beat the Bills either, but I think the Titans take down the Chiefs. That leaves the Bills at home against the Titans. I got to go with the Bills. I like them too much this year. I think their team is the best team in the AFC. I like them too much. That's why I put them at the first seed. Frankly, can't pick against them. Moving on into the NFC. I like the Packers to get the first seed. Then you have the Rams, Bucks, and then Washington. I think Bucks and Rams could be either or. I think Bucks could also just fall into a wild card spot, in all honesty. Like I said, I think the Packers are the best team in the NFC altogether, so I don't see any team that can beat them. However, it's going to be close. Wildcard teams, I'm going to put the 49ers as the 5th seed, the Cardinals as the 6th seed. I think the Saints will sneak in there at 7, and that will be the 7 playoff teams just on the bubble. Bears, Seahawks, maybe even Cowboys. Like I said, I think the Seahawks missed the playoffs this year. I just don't like their team. I think they're going to fall apart, and this is the last year of that team. I mean, I got it right with the Cubs. I said they were going to blow it up this year. I said this was the last year. I was right. I mean, that was pretty obvious, but I think the Seahawks, very similar, except it'll be in the offseason. First game, or Packers get the bye. First game, Rams versus Saints. I think Rams take it. Then you have Bucks versus Cardinals. I think Bucks are just too good. Then you have Washington 49ers. I really like Washington, but I'm predicting the 49ers to be really good again this year, maybe even be playing Trey Lance at this point. I'm going to go with the 49ers. Next, you have the Packers and Niners. I like Aaron Rodgers too much. I think the Packers take it. Rams, Bucks, got to go with Rams. I like the Rams there. I think Matt Stafford makes an NFC championship here going up against one of his former rivals in the Packers, but I think the Packers are too good. I think they win the NFC Championship, then they go on to beat the Bills in the Super Bowl. I think Packers win this championship, even if it's Aaron Rodgers last year in a Packers uniform. I think he goes out on top. And frankly, that's going to be it for me. I think Josh Allen will probably win the MVP this year, especially if the Bills are the number 1 seed, but really there's not really much else to talk about. So if you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more. Like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go check out my podcast, Shoot the Football Fair. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this, so if you want to, comment down below how you think I did, comment your predictions, and until next time, this is Lucas signing off, and I'll see you guys later.